Keanu Reeves lived in a house that didn't look like it belonged to a movie star. No tall gates covered in gold, no flashy fountain in the front yard, no security cameras staring down from every corner like angry eyes. Just a quiet home tucked into the hills above Los Angeles, surrounded by dry grass, a few olive trees, and the kind of stillness you rarely find in a city that never sleeps. Inside, the walls were plain, the furniture simple, and the only real luxury seemed to be the small backyard pool, just big enough for laps, not parties. It shimmered under the California sun like a piece of sky that had fallen to earth and decided to stay. He didn't live there for the views or the status. He lived there because it felt like a place where he could breathe. After long days on set or traveling for work, coming home meant silence, a cup of tea, maybe a book, and the soft sound of water lapping against the edge of the pool. He liked it that way. No fuss, no noise. Just peace. But peace, it turned out, was something others didn't always respect. It started small. A wet towel left crumpled near the diving board. A faint smell of cheap body spray hanging in the air one morning. At first, Keanu thought maybe he'd forgotten to lock the side gate after taking out the trash. He checked it, tightened the latch, and went about his day. Then came the footprints, bare feet, small, leading from the pool to the back fence, not his. He hadn't been out there the night before. A few days later, he found a plastic cup floating in the water, the kind you get at gas stations. Inside, the dregs of something sugary and neon-colored. He fished it out, frowning. That's when he noticed the gate wasn't just unlocked, it had been forced open. The latch was bent just slightly, like someone had jiggled it too many times. He called the local police. They came by, took a quick look, asked if anything was stolen. "Not that I can tell," he said. "Just some people in my yard. In my pool." The officer nodded, wrote it down, and said they'd keep an eye out. But there were no cameras pointed at the backyard, no clear evidence, and honestly, this was LA. Celebrities got pranked, stalked, trespassed on all the time. Unless someone got hurt or something valuable vanished, it wasn't high priority. Keanu understood. He didn't want to make a scene. He just wanted it to stop, but it didn't stop. Night after night, when the city lights dimmed and the hills went quiet, shadows began moving in his backyard. Teenagers, just kids really, would climb over the low back fence, laughing in hushed voices, stripping down to swimsuits they'd hidden in their backpacks. They'd slip into the pool like it was theirs, splashing, whispering, taking selfies with the house in the background. One even floated on his inflatable dolphin, the one he kept for lazy Sundays. They told their friends. Friends told more friends. Soon it became a dare. Spend 5 minutes in Keanu Reeves's pool. If you get a photo, you're legendary. They didn't think he'd mind. After all, wasn't he the nicest guy in Hollywood? The one who gave up his seat on the subway? Who donated millions without telling anyone? Surely he wouldn't care if a few kids cooled off in his pool on a hot night. What they didn't understand was that kindness isn't the same as permission. Keanu started noticing more signs. A muddy handprint on the pool tile. A crushed soda can under the patio table. Once he found a pair of flip-flops, bright green, way too small for him, left near the gate. He picked them up, stared at them for a long moment, then placed them on the windowsill inside, like a strange museum exhibit of someone else's carelessness. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe they didn't know better. Maybe they thought the house was empty. But deep down he knew that wasn't true. They knew exactly whose house it was. That was the whole point. One morning he opened his front door to grab the newspaper and saw it. A blurry photo posted on a local gossip page. It showed 3 figures in his pool, backs turned, moonlight glinting off the water. The caption read, "Late night dip at Keanu's. He's too cool to care and blessed pure Hollywood life." He wasn't angry, not in the way people expected a famous person to be. No shouting, no threats, but a quiet disappointment settled in his chest, heavy and cold. This wasn't just about a pool. It was about respect, about the idea that someone's home, no matter how famous they were, was still a home. Not a playground, not a photo op, not a place to test how far you could push before someone said no. He walked back inside, made tea, and sat by the window looking out at the backyard. The pool was still. The water was clear, but the peace was gone. That afternoon, he bought a simple lock for the side gate, one that clicked shut with a key. He also set up a small motion-activated light near the fence. Nothing aggressive. Just enough to say this space is watched. He hoped that would be enough. But the next weekend, the light flicked on at 2 a.m. He heard muffled laughter, then the unmistakable splash of bodies hitting water. He stayed in bed listening. Part of him wanted to go out there to confront them, to ask why they thought this was okay. But another part, the part that had learned long ago how quickly things could spiral, stayed put. Instead, he grabbed his phone and recorded the sounds. The giggles, the splashing, the clink of a bottle being set down on concrete. The next day, he reviewed his notes, the photos, the audio. He wasn't collecting evidence to punish. He was gathering proof that this was real, that it was happening, that it wasn't just in his head. Because sometimes when you're known for being the nice guy, people assume you'll tolerate anything. They forget you're human too, someone who locks his door at night, who values quiet mornings, who deserves to feel safe in his own backyard. He looked at the pool again. The water was calm now, reflecting the sky like always. But something had shifted. The sanctuary had been breached. And though he didn't want conflict, he knew one thing for certain. This couldn't go on. Not because he wanted revenge, but because everyone, movie star or not, deserves to come home and feel like they're truly home. The lock didn't stop them. Keanu noticed it the very next morning, the side gate slightly ajar again, the new lock hanging loose, its mechanism bent like someone had yanked it with a crowbar or just kicked it hard enough to break. He stood there for a long moment, hands in his pockets, staring at the damage. It wasn't anger he felt this time. It was something quieter, heavier, like watching someone slowly chip away at something you cared about, not out of malice, but because they didn't think it mattered, and maybe that was worse. The trespassing didn't slow down. If anything, it got bolder. Now it wasn't just a couple of kids sneaking in after midnight. It was groups, 4, 5 at a time, bringing towels, snacks, even a small Bluetooth speaker that played muffled beats through the walls of his house. One night he woke to the sound of someone trying the back door handle. He didn't move, just lay there in the dark, heart steady but mind sharp, listening as the knob rattled, then stopped. Footsteps retreated toward the pool. He stayed awake until sunrise. During the day, the yard looked untouched. The water was still clean, the patio swept. But Keanu saw the signs. Cigarette butts near the lemon tree, he didn't smoke. A torn bag of chips under the lounge chair. A plastic bottle with lipstick on the rim left on the edge of the pool. Once he found a phone charger plugged into the outdoor outlet. Someone had used his electricity to juice up their phone while lounging in his space like it was a resort. He started keeping a small notebook on the kitchen counter, date, time, what was left behind, what he heard. Not for drama, just to keep track, to remind himself he wasn't imagining it. Then came the photos. A neighbor, a retired teacher who lived 2 houses down, knocked on his door one afternoon. She looked uneasy, holding her tablet like it might bite her. "I didn't know if I should show you this," she said, voice low. "But it's getting out of hand." She turned the screen toward him. There it was, a video shaky and grainy shot from the street. It showed 3 figures climbing over his back fence, laughing, one of them doing a cannonball into the pool. The caption read, "Keanu's pool, our pool. He's too zen to care, lol." The comments below were a mix of legendary and "that's messed up," but the video had thousands of views. Someone had even tagged his official fan page. Keanu thanked the neighbor quietly, closed the door, and sat at his kitchen table. He didn't rage. He didn't call his lawyer or post anything online. But something inside him shifted. This wasn't just about privacy anymore. It was about safety. What if one of them slipped and hit their head? What if they decided to go inside the house next time? What if someone got hurt and then blamed him for not securing his property well enough? He thought about the note. Maybe words would work where locks hadn't. That evening, he took a plain sheet of paper from his desk, sat at the table, and wrote in his neat, careful handwriting, "Please don't come into my yard. This is my home. I understand you're looking for fun, but this isn't the place. Let's keep everyone safe and respected. Thank you." He taped it to the inside of the gate, visible if someone peeked through or opened it just a crack. He didn't sign it. He didn't need to. They knew for 2 nights nothing happened. No sounds, no lights flickering on. He almost let himself believe it had worked. Then on the 3rd night he heard them again. This time they stayed longer, louder. and when he went out at dawn to check, the note was gone. In its place, scrawled in black marker on the white stucco wall beside the gate, were the words, "Keanu owes us a party." He stared at it, not angry, just tired of being seen as a symbol instead of a person, tired of people assuming his kindness meant he had no limits, tired of coming home to find traces of strangers in the place where he went to be alone. The graffiti stayed there for a day. He didn't wash it off right away. He wanted to look at it, to remember that respect couldn't be assumed. It had to be earned and sometimes defended. Meanwhile, the story started spreading beyond the neighborhood. A local news blog picked it up. Hollywood star's home invaded by nighttime swimmers. The tone was half amused, half concerned. Online, people argued. Some said, "It's just a pool, chill out." Others wrote, "Would you let strangers into your backyard?" No, then why expect him to? A few even claimed he invited this by living so modestly, as if choosing a simple life meant giving up the right to privacy. Keanu ignored the noise, but he did start paying closer attention. He asked the neighbor with the security camera if she'd mind sharing footage when she saw activity near his fence. She agreed without hesitation. A few days later, she handed him a USB drive. On it was clear video. 5 teenagers, faces visible under the streetlight, hopping the fence, laughing, one of them holding a six-pack. They stayed for over an hour. One even tried the back door again. This time, Keanu saved everything. Screenshots, video clips, timestamps. He organized them in a folder on his laptop labeled simply, "Backyard." He still didn't call the police. Not yet. But he was done hoping they'd stop on their own. Done pretending this was harmless fun. Fun didn't leave trash in someone else's space. Fun didn't break locks or write graffiti. Fun didn't make someone feel unsafe in their own home. One afternoon, while walking his dog, a quiet, scruffy rescue he'd adopted years ago, he passed a group of high schoolers near the corner store. They froze when they saw him. One whispered something, and they all burst into nervous laughter. He didn't say a word, just nodded politely and kept walking. But he saw the way they looked at each other afterward, half guilty, half thrilled, like they'd just seen a ghost from their own mischief. That night, he sat by the pool, tea in hand, watching the water ripple under the moon. It should have been peaceful, but now every shadow felt like a warning. Every rustle in the bushes made him tense. He loved this place, but it no longer felt like his. He knew what he had to do next, not out of revenge. Not to shame anyone, but because silence had been mistaken for permission and that mistake had gone on long enough. He opened his laptop, pulled up the folder and began drafting a message to the local police department. This time he wouldn't just report suspicious activity. He'd show them exactly what had been happening. Night after night. Disrespect after disrespect, and if that didn't work, he'd find another way because kindness had its limits. And home, no matter how famous you were, wasn't a public space. It was the one place you should never have to defend just to feel safe. He took a slow sip of tea, the steam warming his face. The night was quiet again, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way for long, and this time he'd be ready. The night was thick with summer heat, the kind that clings to your skin like a second layer. Keanu had just gotten home later than usual, wrapped up in a quiet charity meeting downtown, the kind he never talked about but always made time for. His dog greeted him at the door, tail wagging as if to say, "You're finally back." He poured himself a glass of water, kicked off his shoes, and was about to head to bed when he heard it. Laughter. Not distant. Not imagined. Right in his backyard, he froze. Listened. There it was again. Giggles. Splashing. The clink of glass. Someone was in his pool. Again, he didn't sigh. Didn't curse. Just stood there in the dim hallway weighing his options. He could call the police. They'd come, maybe scare them off, but by the time they arrived, the kids would be gone, and it would start all over tomorrow. He could stay inside, lock the doors, pretend it wasn't happening. But that felt like surrender. Like letting his own home become a place he had to hide in. So he did something different. He walked to the bedroom, pulled on a plain hoodie and a pair of worn-out flip-flops, and stepped outside, not with anger, but with calm. The backyard light was off, but the moon was bright, casting long shadows across the patio. He stayed near the house, just out of sight, and watched. 5 of them. All teenagers. Two in the water, one sitting on the edge with a bottle in hand, two more leaning against the fence, scrolling on their phones like they owned the place. One of them lit a cigarette. Keanu's jaw tightened, not out of rage but concern. That was his space, his air, his peace. He took a breath, then stepped forward. "Hey." The voice was quiet, but it cut through the night like a knife. Every head snapped toward him. Silence fell so fast it felt like the world had paused. For a second, no one moved. Then one of the kids in the pool stood up, water dripping off his shoulders. "Who?" He started, then stopped. His eyes widened. "Wait, is that—" Another squinted, then gasped. "Dude, that's him." Keanu didn't smile, didn't wave, just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at them like he might look at a group of lost hikers who'd wandered onto his land by accident. "Yeah," he said simply. "It's me." One of the girls scrambled out of the pool so fast she slipped, catching herself on the edge. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she blurted, wrapping a towel around herself like armor. The one with the cigarette quickly dropped it into the grass and stomped it out, face red. Keanu didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just walked slowly toward the edge of the pool, stopping a few feet away. "This is my house," he said, voice low but clear. "You're not welcome here." They all stood frozen, dripping wet, eyes wide like deer caught in headlights. I thought," one boy started, then trailed off. "You thought what?" Keanu asked gently, not mocking, just curious. Another kid, the tallest, swallowed hard. "We thought you wouldn't care. Like you're always so chill in interviews. People say you're the nicest guy ever. We figured maybe you wouldn't mind if we just cooled off for a bit." Keanu looked at them, really looked. They weren't hardened troublemakers, just kids, young, foolish, caught up in the thrill of doing something forbidden, not thinking about who it hurt. He'd been young once too, done dumb things. But that didn't make this okay. "Being kind doesn't mean I don't have boundaries," he said. "This is my home. Not a public pool. Not a hangout spot. My home." No one spoke. The only sound was the soft drip of water from their hair onto the concrete. He let the silence sit for a moment, then asked, "Why keep coming back? You saw the note. You saw the lock. You even wrote on my wall." The girl who'd apologized looked down. "It started as a joke. Then it got shared online. People were calling us legends. We didn't think you'd actually notice." "I notice," he said, "every time." He didn't shame them, didn't call them criminals, but he didn't let them off easy either. "Do you know how it feels," he asked, "to come home and find strangers in your yard? To wonder if someone's going to try your doors? To clean up after people who act like your space doesn't matter?" They shook their heads, eyes downcast. "I didn't think it was a big deal," one mumbled. "It is," Keanu said. "To me it is." Then he did something none of them expected. He asked for their names, where they went to school, not to get them in trouble, though he could have, but because he wanted them to understand this had consequences. Real ones. They hesitated, glanced at each other. Finally, one gave a first name. Another gave a school. The rest stayed quiet, scared. "That's okay," Keanu said. "But I've got cameras now. I've got footage. I've got dates, times, what you left behind. If you come back, I won't just talk. I'll go to the police. And they'll talk to your parents. And your schools. And it won't be a joke anymore." He wasn't threatening, just stating facts, like explaining the weather. One of them whispered, "We're really sorry." "I believe you," Keanu said. "But sorry doesn't fix it. Actions do." He stepped back. "Get your things, go home. And don't come back." They moved fast, grabbing towels, shoes, a forgotten water bottle, scrambling over the fence like it might bite them. One dropped a phone case and didn't even stop to pick it up. Within minutes, they were gone. The backyard was empty again. Keanu stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet return. The dog barked once from inside as if checking on him. He walked over, picked up the phone case and placed it on the patio table. Then he looked at the spot where the cigarette had been. He'd clean it in the morning, but something had changed. It wasn't just that he'd confronted them. It was that he'd seen them, not as invaders, but as kids who'd made a bad choice. And in that moment, he realized punishment alone wouldn't teach them anything, but maybe understanding would. He went inside, locked the door, and sat at the kitchen table. He pulled out his notebook, opened to a fresh page, and wrote, "Talk to them tonight. They're scared. They're sorry. But they need to learn." He didn't feel victorious, just clear. The next morning, he called the local community center, the one that ran youth programs and conflict resolution workshops. He spoke to a coordinator, explained what had happened, and asked if there was a way to handle this without dragging the kids through the legal system. The woman on the other end listened carefully. "Restorative justice," she said. "It's exactly what we do." Keanu nodded even though she couldn't see him. "Good," he said, "because I don't want to ruin their lives. I just want them to understand that a home, even mine, isn't a playground." Later that day, he walked the dog again. The neighborhood felt different, quieter, or maybe he just felt more present in it. That night, he sat by the pool again. No splashing, no laughter, just the soft ripple of water and the distant hum of the city below. For the first time in weeks, it felt like his again. And he knew, whatever came next, he'd handle it with the same calm he'd shown tonight. Not because he was a movie star, but because he was a person who believed people could do better, if someone gave them the chance to see why it mattered. A week passed and the backyard stayed quiet. No laughter over the fence, no splashing in the dark, not even a stray soda can. Keanu didn't relax completely. He'd learned better than that. But the silence felt different now. Less like waiting for trouble, more like breathing room. Still, he knew the conversation by the pool wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something else. He'd told them he had footage. He'd told them there would be consequences. And he meant it, not to punish, but to teach. He met with the police again, this time with a folder in hand. Not just notes, but printed stills from the neighbor's camera, timestamps, even the audio clip of the late-night splashing. The officer who came this time was different. Older, quieter, the kind who'd seen every kind of neighborhood drama. He flipped through the pages slowly, then looked up. "You could press charges," he said. "Trespassing, vandalism, breaking and entering if they tried the doors." Keanu shook his head. "I don't want that." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Most people in your position would." "Maybe," Keanu said. "But I don't think jail or a record is what they need. They need to understand why this matters." The officer studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "There's a program," he said. "Run through the city. Restorative justice. They meet with you, with a mediator, talk it through. If they take responsibility, do community service, it stays out of the courts." "That's what I want," Keanu said. It took a few days, but 2 of the teens were identified, partly from school uniforms visible in the video, partly because one of them had bragged about it to a friend who later felt guilty and spoke up. Their parents were contacted. At first, there was defensiveness. "Kids will be kids," one parent said over the phone. "It's not like they stole anything." But when the police explained the full picture, the repeated break-ins, the graffiti, the attempts on the back door, the tone shifted. Shame crept in. Worry. Regret. The meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon at the local community center, a small, sunlit room with folding chairs and posters about respect and accountability on the walls. Keanu arrived early wearing a plain shirt and jeans, no sunglasses, no entourage. Just him and a quiet sense of purpose. The teens came in with their parents, eyes on the floor. They looked smaller than they had by the pool, shoulders hunched, voices gone. A woman with kind eyes and a calm voice introduced herself as the mediator. She explained the rules. No shouting, no blaming, just listening and speaking honestly. Then she turned to Keanu. "Would you like to share how this affected you?" He took a breath. "I live alone," he began, voice steady. "My home is my safe place. When I come back from work, from travel, from everything, I need it to feel like mine. Not a place people treat like a party spot they found online." He didn't raise his voice, didn't call them names, just spoke like he was explaining something simple, like why you don't walk into someone's kitchen without asking. "When you climbed my fence, used my pool, left trash behind, you weren't just using water. You were taking away my peace. And when you wrote on my wall, that wasn't funny. It made me feel like my home wasn't respected, like I didn't matter as a person, just as a name you could joke about." One of the teens sniffed. Looked like he might cry. Keanu paused. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but impact matters more than intent. And the truth is, it could have ended badly. What if one of you slipped and hit your head? What if I'd come out with a weapon thinking someone was breaking in?" This wasn't harmless. Silence filled the room. Even the parents looked down. Then the mediator turned to the teens. "What do you want to say?" One spoke first, voice shaky. I'm sorry. I really am. I thought it was just fun. I didn't think about you being a real person who lives there. I saw your movies, but I forgot you have a life like everyone else. The other nodded. We were stupid. We got caught up in likes and jokes. But seeing you in person, it hit me. You're just a guy who wants to be left alone. And we messed that up. Their parents apologized too, not making excuses, just owning it. One mom said, "We'll make sure this never happens again, and we'll support whatever you think is fair." Keanu looked at them, not with anger, but with something close to sadness. I don't want to ruin your futures, he said, but you need to learn that actions have weight. So here's what I'm offering. He explained the choice, either face formal charges, trespassing, vandalism, possible probation, or complete 40 hours of community service. Not just picking up trash, but helping at the local youth center, cleaning up parks, even assisting at a senior home. Something that reminded them that community means respect, not just convenience. They didn't hesitate. We'll do the service, both said at once. The mediator wrote it down. Signed forms, set schedules. It was done, not with handcuffs, but with accountability. Afterward, Keanu walked out into the afternoon sun. He didn't feel triumphant, just lighter, like a weight had been shared instead of carried alone. Over the next few weeks, he heard updates through the community center. The teens showed up on time, worked hard. One even started helping organize a neighborhood cleanup day. They weren't saints, but they were trying. Then one rainy Tuesday, a small envelope appeared in his mailbox. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter on lined notebook paper. It read, I'm the one who dropped the phone case. I've been doing my service at the park near Oak Street. Today I saw a kid trying to climb the fence at someone's house to get a ball. I stopped him, told him to knock on the door instead. It felt weird, but right, I get it now. Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling. And you deserve that feeling as much as anyone. I'm sorry. And thank you for not giving up on us. Keanu read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in the same drawer as the green flip-flops and the bent lock. He didn't write back. Didn't need to. The letter wasn't asking for anything, just offering honesty. That weekend, he sat by the pool again. The water was clear. The gate was locked. The wall was clean. But more than that, the air felt different. Not just quiet, but calm. Like trust had started to grow back, slowly, like grass after a long drought. He knew not everyone would understand his choice. Some would say he should have made an example of them. But to him, real strength wasn't in punishment. It was in giving someone a chance to do better. And sometimes that chance began with a simple conversation under the moonlight, and ended with a letter in the rain. Months passed, and the story that had buzzed through the neighborhood like summer static began to fade. The gossip pages moved on to newer scandals. The online videos stopped getting likes. Even the local coffee shop chatter shifted to other things: traffic, weather, the new bakery down the street. Life, as it always does, rolled forward. But in Keanu's backyard, something quieter had taken root. The pool was still there, of course. Same size, same shimmer under the sun. But it felt different now. Not just because the gate stayed locked, or because motion sensor lights blinked softly when a raccoon wandered too close. It felt different because the air around it had settled. The tension that used to hum just beneath the surface. The kind that made you check the locks twice, that made every rustle in the bushes feel like a warning, was gone. He'd kept his word. No charges. No public shaming. Just quiet accountability. And in return, the kids kept theirs. They showed up for their service hours week after week. One even started helping the community center run a workshop for younger teens about digital responsibility. How posting a photo from someone's backyard might seem funny, but it's really a violation. It wasn't perfect. They weren't suddenly saints, but they were trying, and that mattered. One afternoon, while walking his dog near the park where one of them volunteered, Keanu saw him from a distance, broom in hand, sweeping leaves off a bench, talking to a group of middle schoolers who looked up at him like he knew something they didn't. The kid glanced over, saw Keanu, and froze for just a second. Then he gave a small, respectful nod. Keanu returned it, no words, none needed. That moment stayed with him. It wasn't about forgiveness exactly. It was about understanding on both sides. They'd learned that fame doesn't erase humanity. And he'd remembered that mistakes, even big ones, don't define a person forever. Back home, he'd made a few small changes. Not fortress-like, nothing harsh. Just a sturdier gate with a proper lock, a few more lights along the fence line, and a sign near the side entrance that read, simply, "Private property." Thank you for respecting it. No threats, just clarity. Neighbors noticed the difference too. One brought over homemade lemon bars and said, "Things feel calmer around here." Another mentioned that kids in the area had started knocking on doors to ask before retrieving lost balls, something that hadn't happened in years. Keanu didn't take credit, but he smiled. Then came the morning he found it. He'd just finished his usual laps in the pool, the water cool against his skin, the sky pale blue with the promise of heat later. As he toweled off, something caught his eye near the base of the gate. A small hand-shaped tile about the size of a palm, painted in soft blues and greens. It wasn't store-bought. It looked fired in a school kiln, slightly uneven at the edges. On it, in careful black lettering, were 2 lines. "Sorry. Thank you." No name. No date, just those words, simple and honest. He picked it up. It was warm from the sun. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the slight ridges where the glaze had pooled. Then he carried it inside and placed it on the windowsill above the kitchen sink, the same spot where the green flip-flops had sat for weeks, now long since donated to a shelter. Every morning since, as he made his tea, he'd glance at it, not as a trophy, not as proof he'd won, but as a reminder that people can change. That kindness, when paired with firmness, can move mountains, or at least mend fences. The media never got the full story. There was no dramatic courtroom showdown, no viral apology video, no celebrity feud, just a quiet resolution that didn't fit neatly into headlines. And that was fine with him. Some things weren't meant for an audience. They were meant for real life. He still gave to charities, still rode the subway when he could, still held doors open and thanked service workers by name. But now, when fans approached him, there was a new kind of respect in their eyes. Not just admiration for his roles, but recognition of the man behind them. Someone who stood his ground without losing his heart. One evening, as he sat on the patio with a book and a cup of chamomile tea, the city lights twinkling below like scattered stars, he heard a distant sound, a group of kids laughing on the street. But this time it didn't make him tense. It just sounded like life. Normal, messy, hopeful life. His dog lay at his feet snoring softly. The pool reflected the first stars of the night, and for the first time in a long while, Keanu felt completely, peacefully at home. Not because the world had changed, but because he'd protected what mattered, and in doing so, reminded others that respect goes both ways. He closed his book, took a slow sip of tea, and watched the night settle in. No intruders, no noise. Just stillness and the gentle ripple of water in the dark. And that was enough. More than enough. Because home isn't about walls or locks or fame. It's about feeling safe enough to be yourself, and kind enough to give others the chance to be better. And in that quiet backyard, under a sky full of stars, both had finally returned.